Here's my recipe for a great start to the morning. All right, it's very simple. Step 1, get yourself an empty coffee mug. All right, you ready? Step 2, fill it with Blackout Coffee. That's it. Blackout Coffee is a terrific family-owned business, and they're entirely focused on bringing you premium coffee, fresh roasted, and shipped out within 48 hours of roasting. Go to blackoutcoffee.com, promo code PDB for 20% off your first-time purchase. It's Thursday, 3 October. Welcome to the President's Daily Brief. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. All right, let's get briefed. We'll start with a look at the turmoil facing the Iranian regime, which is increasingly gripped by paranoia, panic, and mistrust over fears of Mossad infiltration following Israel's systematic destruction of Hezbollah's operations over the past 2 weeks. Later in the program, as fighting rages in eastern Ukraine, Russian President Putin is moving to bolster his military's ranks, ordering a new wave of conscriptions and granting immunity to criminals willing to deploy to the front lines. What a peach of a guy. His meat grinder tactics are laying waste to an entire generation of Russian men, so now he's going to fill the pipeline further with criminals. Plus an update on the mounting legal woes of New York City Mayor Eric Adams, as prosecutors signal that they intend to bring additional federal corruption charges against the mayor and others in his orbit. And finally, in today's back of the brief, Hamas has claimed credit for a mass shooting attack in Tel Aviv on Tuesday that killed 7 and injured 16. The terror attack, one of the deadliest in recent memory, came as Israel approaches the 1-year anniversary of the 7 October attacks by Hamas. But first, today's PDB Spotlight. I want to begin with a look inside the Iranian regime, which has been left in a state of paranoia and to some degree paralysis over possible Israeli infiltration of senior government ranks following Israel's assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah last Friday, not to mention the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh previously while staying in an IRGC guest house in a supposedly secure compound in Tehran. Yeah, that will create some concern. An exclusive report from Reuters, citing 3 senior Iranian sources, reveals that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had desperately attempted to warn the Hezbollah leader to flee Lebanon in the days before he was killed, after Iranian intelligence informed him that Israel had successfully infiltrated Hezbollah's inner circles. Khamenei reportedly offered Nasrallah safe haven in Iran, but was rebuffed by the now-deceased terror chief. Clearly, he did not choose wisely. Iranian officials first sounded the alarm on possible widespread infiltration of their network of proxies following the death of Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike on July 30th that hit a secretive Beirut location where he was meeting at the time with a senior commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. Now, that's the thing about those IRGC senior commanders. They just keep showing up wherever Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terror groups happen to be. It could just be a coincidence. The fact that Israel was able to identify the secret facility used by Shukr reportedly spooked both senior Hezbollah officials and their Iranian backers. Anxiety spiked again when later that same day, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was taken out in Tehran by a bomb suspected to have been planted by Mossad operatives working inside Iran. Then came the covert pager and radio attacks on September 17th and 18th, which saw Israel detonate thousands of communications devices laced with explosives carried by Hezbollah fighters, which an Israeli shell company had lured the terror group into buying. Now, it was in the aftermath of this attack that a rattled Khamenei in Iran reportedly reached out to Nasrallah and asked him to flee to Iran. Nasrallah, however, declined, saying he was confident in his security and had full trust in his inner circle of advisors. Oops. He instructed his subordinates to initiate a major investigation to try to purge spies from their ranks, but personally felt relatively safe. But an increasingly worried Khamenei attempted to change Nasrallah's mind, sending a close personal advisor from the IRGC to Lebanon last week to once again implore him to relocate to a safer location. The Hezbollah leader again refused and shortly after was killed, along with Khamenei's messenger, when Israel dropped some 80 tons of bombs on his fortified bunker in Beirut. That was a major blow for Khamenei, who had spent decades pouring resources into Lebanon to build Hezbollah into one of the largest terror armies in the world, with the largest stockpile of missiles held by a non-state actor. A Hezbollah expert at the Swedish Defense University told Reuters, quote, "Basically, Iran lost the biggest investment it had for the past decades. It shook Iran to the core. It shows how Iran is deeply infiltrated," end quote. Since last Friday's assassination, Khamenei has been staying inside a secure location in Iran, reportedly just living off DoorDash and Uber Eats and binge-watching Friends. Okay, I made that last part up. On Tuesday, he ordered the launch of nearly 200 ballistic missiles on Israel in retaliation for Nasrallah's death. IRGC leadership is reportedly highly concerned over his safety, and with good reason. Israel is now planning a response to Iran's attack, which sources said Wednesday could involve targeted assassinations inside Iran, similar to the Mossad operation that killed Haniyeh. Meanwhile, the IRGC has been furiously investigating possible infiltrations within their own ranks, probing everyone from senior security officials to commanders within the IRGC. According to Reuters sources, the investigations are particularly focused on officials who travel abroad or have relatives living outside Iran. Several members of the IRGC have already been arrested over apparent suspicious trips to Lebanon. Khamenei's paranoia has reportedly spiraled, with a source telling Reuters that the supreme leader, quote, "no longer trusts anyone." Israel's highly effective and rapid destruction of Hezbollah's operations has also reportedly fractured Iran's relationship with Hezbollah and their other regional proxies. The sources who spoke with Reuters said the situation could significantly impede the future operations of Iran's axis of resistance. One source said, quote, "the trust that held everything together has disappeared," end quote. Well, as anyone who's watched a Hallmark movie knows, once trust is gone, the relationship is over. All right, coming up after the break, Russian President Putin is moving to bolster his military's ranks, ordering a new wave of conscriptions and granting immunity to criminals willing to deploy to the front lines in Ukraine. Oh, that sounds like quite the deal. Plus, an update on the mounting legal woes of New York City Mayor Eric Adams, as prosecutors signal they intend to bring additional federal corruption charges against the mayor and others in his orbit. I'll have those stories when we come back. I want to turn your attention to Russia, where President Putin signed into law a new measure on Wednesday exempting defendants and suspects who agree to fight in the Russian military from criminal liability. The law is the Putin regime's latest attempt to expand recruitment efforts for their ongoing war on Ukraine, where their forces are slowly advancing in the east, but incurring heavy losses, and that's according to a report from the Washington Post. The measure builds on earlier recruitment methods that targeted convicted criminals or those under investigation, offering them the opportunity to avoid prison by signing contracts with the Defense Ministry. Now, under the new law, anyone facing criminal charges, whether arrested, charged, or merely under suspicion, can enlist and avoid prosecution altogether, further bolstering Russia's military ranks. Since the war's inception, the Kremlin has been mining their prison population for soldiers, first through the Wagner Group, a private military company, and later through the Ministry of Defense's own programs. It's estimated that at least 100,000 prisoners have been conscripted since the war began in early 2022. With the law now in place, Russian authorities estimate they can send around 20,000 additional individuals to the front lines. However, the risks of relying on such recruits have become clear over the past couple of years, as most lack any battlefield training or experience. And we should also note as a public service announcement that many of these recruits have reoffended upon returning from war. Despite these concerns, the Putin regime is determined to avoid instituting a general draft and mass mobilization of reservists. The backlash from its partial mobilization in September 2022 which aimed to call up some 300,000 reservists but led to mass protests and the flight of tens of thousands of Russian men, has left the government wary of repeating such efforts. Instead, Putin is focused on expanding the military through targeted recruitment and regular conscription. Along with a new law, Putin signed a decree on Monday ordering the conscription of 133,000 new servicemen as part of Russia's more limited annual autumn draft, which runs from October 1st until the end of the year. According to a state-run newspaper, these conscripts, aged 18 to 30, are not part of the reserve forces and are required to serve 12 months in military units stationed within Russia. Like past conscriptions, Russian officials stressed the new troops will not be deployed to Ukraine or other active conflict zones. This conscription drive is part of a broader military buildup that Putin ordered in September, citing increased threats along their western border. Putin is aiming to expand the Russian military to some 1.5 million personnel, which would achieve his goal of having the world's second largest military force after China. Okay, let's shift the focus stateside, where federal prosecutors suggest new charges could be imminent against New York City Mayor Eric Adams and his political allies, as the investigation into illegal gifts and campaign contributions linked to foreign interests deepens. During Adams' latest court appearance on Wednesday, he faced accusations that, if convicted on all counts, could result in up to 45 years in prison. As we've been tracking on the PDB, Adams, the first sitting New York City mayor to face criminal charges, stands accused of accepting illegal gifts and contributions from Turkish nationals during his mayoral campaign. Allegations further claim that once in office, Adams pressured city officials to grant favors to foreign interests in exchange for political support. In court on Wednesday, Assistant U.S. Attorney Hagan Scotton disclosed it is, quote, quite likely prosecutors will seek a superseding indictment that will bring forth additional defendants who could be charged, as well as additional charges against Adams. Scotton noted that evidence includes Turkish Airlines records, financial documents, and communications between co-conspirators, some of which are written in Turkish. One critical aspect of the investigation involves allegations that Adams received free or heavily discounted upgrades on international flights arranged by Turkish business people and officials. Prosecutors presented evidence showing that while Adams paid a nominal amount for economy class tickets, the actual upgrades were worth thousands of dollars, creating the appearance that he was paying his way when he wasn't. Additional evidence, including bank and phone records, support claims that Adams solicited illegal campaign contributions from foreign donors. Now, pressure on Adams is building. New York Governor Kathy Hochul described this week's resignation of Adams' senior advisor, Tim Pearson, as, quote, a good first step. Pearson stepped down after federal agents seized cell phones, documents, and cash from his home. Hochul stated she's monitoring the situation and hinted at further changes in Adams' administration. Inside the courtroom, Adams' defense team filed a motion to dismiss the bribery charge, arguing that the travel perks in question don't meet federal legal standards for bribery. There are, after all, federal legal standards for bribery. Adams' lawyer, Alex Spiro, requested a March 2025 trial date, which would fall before the certification deadline for candidates in New York's mayoral election. Prosecutors did not oppose this request. U.S. District Judge Dale Ho said he would consider it, acknowledging that the public and the mayor are interested in a speedy trial. Adams' defense also requested that prosecutors investigate potential leaks of confidential information. Though they did not present specific evidence of leaks, his defense pointed to high-profile news reports that surfaced after FBI agents searched the home of one of Adams' key fundraisers last November. With court dates scheduled through November and prosecutors expected to respond to defense motions by mid-October, the possibility of a superseding indictment looms large. And here I was, thinking that government and political corruption stories would end with the recent tale of Gold Bar Bob Menendez. Guess I was wrong. Coming up in today's Back of the Brief, Hamas has claimed credit for a mass shooting attack in Tel Aviv on Tuesday that killed 7 and injured 16. I'll be right back. In today's Back of the Brief, Hamas has claimed responsibility for a mass shooting and stabbing attack on Tuesday at a train station in Tel Aviv, which unfolded just minutes before Iran unleashed their missile attack on Israel. The attack claimed the lives of 7 Israeli civilians and injured 16 others, making it one of the deadliest terror attacks to strike Israel in recent memory. The gunman reportedly began shooting and stabbing bystanders on a railway car as it approached a stop in the Jaffa neighborhood of Tel Aviv. When it arrived, they continued their attack on the platform before being stopped by armed civilians and a local municipal security officer who killed one of the gunmen and seriously wounded the other, that's according to a report from the Times of Israel. Much of the detail regarding the affiliation of the 2 gunmen remained murky in the chaotic aftermath of Iran's missile attack on Tuesday. But Hamas issued a statement on Wednesday officially taking credit for the massacre, saying the perpetrators were members of the Al-Qassam brigades operating out of the West Bank city of Hebron. Witnesses say the 2 gunmen blended in, with one wearing a pin representing solidarity with Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The other was reportedly wearing civilian clothes while carrying an M16 rifle, and that's something that is commonplace for reservists in the IDF. On Wednesday, the IDF imposed a closure on the West Bank city of Hebron as their investigation continued. The Palestinian terrorists reportedly traveled from Hebron into Israel without securing a permit. A local mosque where the gunmen apparently stashed bags ahead of the attack is also in the spotlight. But, to be clear, investigators have not alleged any ties between the gunmen and the mosque. The terrorists reportedly threatened members of the congregation before closing the doors, telling them to stay inside or be killed. Still, the massacre has obviously heightened the already simmering tensions between Israeli civilians and the Palestinian population, particularly those in the West Bank. The attack comes as leaders in Jerusalem prepare for both the Rosh Hashanah and the upcoming one-year anniversary of the brutal 7 October attacks by Hamas. And that, my friends, is the President's Daily Brief for Thursday, 3 October. If you have any questions or comments, please, and I mean this, reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. I'd love to hear from you. To listen to the show ad-free, become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. And if it's Thursday, that means the PDB team is busy producing a new episode of our extended weekend show, the PDB Situation Report. This weekend's guests are excellent and will be providing insight into the Iranian missile attack and possible repercussions, as well as the ongoing ground operations by the IDF in southern Lebanon. New episodes drop, as the kids say, every Friday at 10 p.m. on the First TV and also on our YouTube channel at President's Daily Brief, as well, of course, as all podcast platforms. I'm Mike Baker. I'll be back later today with the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.